Namaskar, Mabuhai. Welcome back to Soul Yatra with an extremely interesting topic. So, we're going to talk about two planets, what we call in Vedic astrology Rahu and Ketu, and in the Western astrology we call it the dragon's head and the dragon's tail. Now, Rahu Ketu are usually dreaded. People get so scared about them. And they are not truly planets, they are energy bodies in astrology. What I like to share is what I discovered when I began to understand astrology, why they are so important in our lives, and what's the analogy or the science behind these two planets or whatever. They are not planets, but play an important role in astrology, extremely important role. So I looked at it in these different ways. So what I discovered that if I had to look on the spectrum of light, which is the Vibgyor, you've got the 7 colors, which is related with the planets. So you've got red, which relates with Mars, orange with Sun, yellow with Jupiter, green with Mercury, blue with Venus, and then violet and indigo with Saturn. I would wonder, where do the Rahu Ketu get their colors? So Rahu is the smoky gray and Ketu is dark. Again, something on those lines, invisible. Both are considered like dark, not illuminated colors. Also, it is also said in astrology world that Rahu Ketu have the power of exponential expansion. And interestingly, they don't have their own mindset. So for example, if Rahu or the dragon's head was placed with, say, Sun, it would empower Sun with exponential power, but it would not decide how to behave. So if Sun was exalted, all the power would go into that exaltation. So Sun would only get amplified in its good behavior. However, if Sun was in debilitation, even then Rahu would give all the power, but the empowerment would be in probably not the best way. So that's why you fear them, because you don't know, they'll just empower without seeing whether that planet is in good dignity or bad dignity. So I would always wonder, how does this make sense? So then what I discovered when I started to understand the characteristics of these planets, what is taught, and that's where I realized that basically they are important. How? So on the spectrum of light, Vibgyor has got a chronological order. What is the chronology of that? The chronology of that order is, it's by its frequency. See, every light out of that sunlight, the 7 lights, each light has a wavelength, and the distance, how much it travels without really bending down, is decided by its wavelength. So red has the longest wavelength, so it doesn't bend soon. That's why it can be seen from far. By the time you reach violet indigo, they're very high on frequencies, so they travel like this. So they can't be seen, right? Isn't it true? Now look at the characteristics. So you talk about Martian men, right? So Mars in astrology talks about grit, about your ability to withstand and not bow down or bend easy. Doesn't that relate with red, a wavelength which doesn't bend, right? But on the flip side, it is also said that people whose Mars are very strong can also be very hard-headed. They can be very obstinate. That's also true, right? So that's how the characteristics of each light actually can be applied to human characteristics depending on how the planets are placed. I mean, it's a very logical explanation, right? So for example, Mercury, if you see on the spectrum of light, Mercury green is almost in the center. So it looks like it bends, but doesn't bend so much. That means we say Mercury is the salesman, So a salesman, if needed, he will bow down where he needs to, and then wherever he needs to be tough, he can be, right? So there's a balancing act. By the time you go to violet and indigo, which represents Saturn, it is so humble. Saturn is considered to be the most humble planet, or somebody with exalted Saturn will be extremely humble people. They're very good with the masses. They connect with the masses. That shows the frequency of that light, right? After red, there are invisible lights. That's radio waves, microwaves, and infrared light. Now they have very long wavelengths, right? And that's why they are the ones who transmit information. So they are used for our, any kind of live telecast, computer, radios, right, which started. This is all due to these waves. On the other side, after violet and indigo, you will see X-rays, gamma rays, ultraviolet light. Now these are extremely short wavelength, so they can enter anywhere, right? Imagine, we do an X-ray, right? So normal lights could not penetrate and get a picture of your organ inside your body, but X-ray was able to do it. So these are lights. Why are they able to do? Because they have the ability to bend and enter everywhere. Now, in astrology, Ketu or the dragon's tail is actually these long wavelengths, which is the radio waves, the microwaves, and the infrared waves. Why? Because if you understand their characteristics, you will see it relates to that. So for example, what is Ketu? People who have got a positive, good Ketu, their intuitive sense is very strong. Their ability to foresight is very strong. But at the same time, they can also be very detached. They can separate themselves. They can go far. On the other side, the other waves, the shorter wavelength waves, we call them Rahu or the dragon's head. If you understand astrology, if you read about Rahu's character or dragon's head, it's very materialistic. It wants everything right now. Remember, and it can also penetrate where nobody else can. If you understand the characteristics, you relate to them, and then you realize these 7 planets or these 7 lights are actually between these two. That means it is true that they are less empowered than these two. And on a metaphysical level, we say that, your crown chakra, beyond this is Ketu, and your Muladhara chakra, your root chakra, is Rahu. And all our 7 chakras are between these two. So basically, our life seems to be a conflict between you want to live in this material world and just immerse into that, or you have another part of you telling that you should move away from all this, elevate yourself a little and look beyond, which could make your life easier. Or, we'll talk more about the law of karma, where how what you do in this world can have an impact on your upcoming lives. And Ketu plays, or the dragon's tail in your chart, plays an important role in results and outcome of your lives beyond this life. Isn't it interesting? I'll give another quick analogy of this. From a force perspective, in physics, if you study, you've got the centrifugal force and the centripetal force. They play an important role in all our movement of planets. The centripetal force is what forms the whirlpool. It sucks inward. And the centrifugal force is a force which works at 90 degrees. So it helps planet go around like this. So, when you're doing something is running like this, in a swirling in a fast motion, and if it is left, it will zoom out. If it breaks, it'll go at a fast speed outside and it'll detach. That force is Ketu. It detaches, it goes out. And the other force, which continues to stay there and get deeper into this material world, is what is centripetal force, what we call the dragon's head. If I had to keep using analogies and trying to apply logic, it makes so much sense that when we are predicted from an astrology chart, how our behavior can be predicted by looking at the position of these 2 important planets and tell how we are. And the most important, they play an important role in decoding some of our karmic backlogs, what we are carrying, which we call as the non-erasable destiny, and why certain things happen in our life for which sometimes we don't get an answer. These 2 play an important role in giving us an answer. So I'll take a pause here and stop for today. I hope this was interesting. We'll keep talking more about it. But again, thank you for hearing me out and listening to this. As always, like, subscribe, and share. Thank you.